kids generally come running into my classroom. I'm not exaggerating. They come running in, they get to their seat, they log in, and they want to get going right away because they're engaged in what they're creating with cool stuff.
So welcome back to our Innovator series. Today I have Bob with me, and he wrote a book called Hard Fun. And so today we're just going to talk to him about who he is, what he does, his passions. So you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you, Sume and Isla and the folks at Wequil for having me this morning. I really appreciate the chance to chat with you. I've been watching what you all are doing there, and I'm super impressed with your approach to learning, which exactly kind of matches mine. So my name is Bob Irving, and I'm also known as Crouching Python on Discord and in YouTube. So that's so I'm a middle school computer science teacher, which I've been doing for about the last 20 years. And in that time, I've kind of come up with what I think is a pretty cool way to teach computer science. So I'll just tell you how it works. I teach grades 5 through 8 at my school. And everybody at my school, it's an independent school here in Charleston, South Carolina, named Porter Gowd. Everybody has to take computer science for a quarter. So for 1/4 of the year. So I have every middle school student in grades 5 through 8. So I've kind of built out this curriculum with all kinds of stuff, which, includes things like game design and robotics and creative computing. So music and art, and a big old helping of Minecraft coding. So those are the things that I kind of use currently in my curriculum. I also host Minecraft Club, so kids can come in and just play if they want to play. In class, we don't play, we kind of code, but if you know Minecraft, you're playing. I mean, it's all good. So anyway, so I'm kind of nearing the end of my full-time in-class teaching career, which is hard to believe, but I'm getting ready to kind of shift online. And I wrote a book because I have a friend named Doug Bergman, who is my department head. And I really wanted to talk about what I did, but I felt like I wasn't really an expert in anything. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are experts. They're Minecraft experts or Unreal Engine experts or Roblox studio experts or, whatever. And I said, I'm not really an expert in anything. There's lots of people that know way more than a lot of my students know way more than I do about stuff. And he said, well, maybe that's your thing. I mean, you know a lot about a lot of things. And so that was kind of the beginning of thinking about the book. So I wrote this book, which is called Hard Fun. The description, I think, is going to be, the link's going to be in the description. And it's really about what I do in my classes and how I do it and why I do it. So it's really aimed at people who are in the space of helping kids learn to code, doing cool stuff. It's not really aimed at kids. I mean, I suppose any kid could read it and get something out of it, but it's more aimed at teachers and homeschoolers and people that run camps and any online courses, anybody who's in that space of helping kids get excited about coding. So it's called Hard Fun. The subtitle is How to Supercharge Your Middle School Computer Science Classroom with Project-Based, Hands-On, Just-in-Time Learning. And that really describes what I do. So we have big projects and deep dives into cool things. And the projects are basically ones that the students choose themselves. So for instance, in my 6th grade classes, we learn the beginnings of command blocks in Minecraft. So if you know anything about Minecraft, you probably know what a command block is, and it's kind of the Minecraft equivalent of code that's baked into the game. And you can do all kinds of stuff like teleport players and give them stuff and give them special effects and features and build stuff and all this kind of cool stuff. So, but rather than me saying, okay, now class, today we're going to talk about the teleport command, and I put it, on the screen or whatever, I say, no, for the next month, you're going to build a mini game in Minecraft, or a map, or some kind of cool interactive experience of your own choosing. Now you're required to use, let's say, these 5 different command blocks successfully to make your project really pop. And so that's what they do. So they kind of say, oh, I want to build a parkour map, or I want to do a maze, or I want to do, find the feature or an escape room, or whatever they choose. And then along the way, they do that. So I don't front load this with me talking and them listening and taking notes, because I was in middle school once, and there's nothing more boring than listening to your teacher talk. So, but I say, let's get started. Most everybody has done something with Minecraft, so they know how to build stuff. If not, I've got some help along the way. And then when they get stuck and they say, oh, how do you do? I mean, I point them to my YouTube channel, and I've got some short introductory lessons on how to use each of the basic commands. So it's called just-in-time learning, because people want to know what they want when they want it. I mean, you can talk first about, well, class, today we're going to talk about variables. And a variable is, and, you can learn that way and you'll know what a variable is, but so what? I mean, my thing is,
Yeah.
why not get it when somebody says we're doing games in Scratch in one of my classes, and they're like, oh, how do I get a timer working? And then I say, well, I'm glad you asked, because what you need to do that is what we call a variable. And here's a link to my video, which shows you how to do that. And then that's just in time. When they need to know what a variable is, that's the time that learning really happens, because, they're like falling out of their seats. They need it right then. And so that's the way I structure my classes. So that's what I do. Kids generally come running into my classroom. And I'm not exaggerating. And they come running in, they get to their seat, they log in, and they want to get going right away. I have kids say they skip recess and say, can we come and work on our Minecraft game? Well, as a teacher, what are you going to say? No, absolutely not. Extra learning? No, we haven't. Of course, yes, come on in. But and then when the bell rings, they're like, oh no. And I say, hey, I bet you're like that in every class, aren't you? You're just so sad to see the class end. They said, no. But because they're engaged in what they're creating with cool stuff, then they want to keep going.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I didn't invent this, but I've kind of developed little bits and pieces that I've taken from all these other places. And I call it hard fun because that's a nod to one of my heroes, whose name was Seymour Papert, who was a professor of math at MIT. And he's the kind of the godfather of kids and coding. Like back in the 70s, he was doing robotics with kids, which is insane. I know. And that's what one of his students said. He said, is this fun? And one of his students said, yeah, but it's hard fun. And I thought, oh, that's good. I'm stealing that. So that's what I called my book. And I tell my students on day one, I said, I'm promising you this, hard fun. I said, I know it's going to be fun, but I guarantee you at some point it's going to get hard and you're going to be frustrated. And, but I said, because you want to make it work, you're going to work at it. And so it works. I don't know what to say, except that I've seen it work all day, every day, with all these different grades. And I don't know what to say. So I thought, well, I'm going to put it in my book. Hold the book up. Hard fun.
In the description.
In the description below. Don't forget to share, like, and no, I'm just kidding. But it's available. It's on Amazon.
Yeah.
Ebook, print, Kindle library. You can read it if you have a subscription to Kindle Library. And I realized when I wrote it, I wasn't going to make the New York Times bestseller list with it. It's a very small niche of people who are in this space, but I wanted to kind of put it out there and have it, in print, so I could refer people to it and say, well, this is how I do. So I have chapters on kind of my basic pedagogy and why I do what I do and kind of how it works. And then I kind of break it down into things like how I use Minecraft for coding and Python game design and Scratch and different robotics platforms and music coding and art coding and all this kind of stuff. And so, and my last one, I think, is called Student Voice and Choice, because I really think it's important that students get a choice in what they do. So they get to demonstrate, well, I'm going to demonstrate what I've learned this way. And somebody else next to them is saying, no, I'm going that way. It doesn't matter as long as you can demonstrate, I get it. And here's how I'm going to show you that I got it, because I've used these, whatever concepts here in the way that I chose. And then it means something to people. So that's what I do.
I have a question.
Okay.
So what would you tell your 10-year-old self if you could go back and do something different that would make your life better?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm going to really show my vintage here by saying my 10-year-old self did not have computers available. I just didn't. And I wish, oh, how I wish. And I actually I told my students this last week. I said, I am so jealous of you all that you get to take this course. I never had anything like this when I was in school. You're so lucky to have this course and have a teacher like me that makes it exciting and fun. But what would I tell my 10-year-old self?
Just acting differently. It doesn't have to be about computers.
Okay. Oh man. I wasn't the best 10-year-old kid in the planet, I have to confess. But I think I might have said, I think, Bob, it probably would have been better if you'd done more of your homework than you did.
Yeah.
It wasn't high on my list of things that I wanted to do. I have to confess, Isla.
Well, it's also part of this is, just after hearing what you said earlier, I just see like so many different parallels of like what your approach and what we're doing. We even use the same terminology of like project based, and it it really gets people excited. And I think a lot of the reason why kids might not want to do a lot of their homework is because it's not theirs, right? It's not their project. They're not choosing what they want to do. And so I think that that's just really awesome how you're implementing that in your classroom. And one question I have is we have had a lot of success in like implementing a very similar approach in our school, but in the traditional classroom in a public school, it could be really hard for teachers to try to do the same thing because you have 30 kids and there are certain objectives that you have to teach. And so like what would be your suggestion to maybe teachers who they want to get their students excited, they want to have them doing projects, but they also might not be sure how to implement it in their classroom?
Right. Okay. Well, here's what I would say. First of all, I always say start small. Do something for a day. Don't say, oh, I'm going to change my whole course to project-based learning, because I think that way lies madness. I mean, it's nothing, it's not going to work. But do it for a day. Oh, and then if that works, build it out a little bit at a time. Let's try a 2-day project. And then maybe we'll do this whole unit will be project-based, have a beginning, kind of a middle, and an end. And so it's kind of manageable. The other thing that I bake in is I always have very clear rubrics. So when the students start, I don't show them the rubric on day one. I get them going and engaged on day one. But day 2 or 3, I would say, now here's how you're going to be. We're going to assess your learning, and I'll put that out to them somehow, so they have a direction that they're going in. So it's not just like, oh, let's just go build fun stuff and whatever happens, happens. Because I do have learning objectives. And if you've come into my classrooms, it looks like chaos, but it isn't, because everybody's doing something different, but they're all engaged in what they're doing. So I would say start small. If a person is trying to do this, make your objectives clear. You have to demonstrate your understanding of, these command blocks or variables or, events or whatever in computer science. And this is how, we're going to check off, yep, you've done this, you've done this, you've done this, you've done this. So I guess those are my two things. Start small and have very clear objectives where and all good teachers have objectives. They don't want to just say, hey, let's just learn stuff and we'll just play, because I mean, I'm not against play. I think that's great. And I do think you learn as you go, but I think you still have to have a goal that you're headed towards, even if it's kind of hidden. And this is what I call this, and I didn't invent this, but I call it stealth learning. In other words, they don't know they're learning. I know they're learning. I've structured the whole thing so that I know not only what they're learning, but that they're learning. But I don't say to them, now, kids, today you're going to learn these important computer science principles, because they could care less about important computer science principles. They really don't care. I mean, I care because I'm a computer science teacher, but they don't care. But if I say, hey, you're going to build your own game and it's going to have levels and you're going to have, health and lives and a score and, all this kind of, sounds and, then their eyes get wider and they're like, oh yeah, but all of the objectives unbeknownst to them. So it's kind of stealth learning. Why not? I mean, and if you think about it, they're doing this all the time. Kids that play games, how long will kids work on beating a particular boss or something? I always hear teachers say, oh, kids today, they're so, they're so lazy. They won't work for, you watch them play a game. They're not lazy at all. They will work and work and work. That's why hard fun works, but it's something they want to do. So you have to align that. Sorry, that's what I had to say. Did you have a question, Isla? I'm sorry.
Well, I was wondering, like, would if you when you're doing that, are you like would you call it making it relevant to their life? Because if they're learning like a certain concept but they don't know how to use it, I think that might be one of the reasons why they just tune it out, because they say, oh, this is not relevant to me, I
I
won't
That's
use
a
it.
great question, Isla. And I actually do a thing, usually not always, but a lot of times at the end of a quarter, I say, we're going to today, or not today, but this next week or two, you're going to do what I call a passion project. And the passion project starts with something that you care about. So in middle school, it could be anything, it could be basketball or, pet safety or, healthy eating or boating or whatever. I said, you start with that. You say, okay, this is what would you do or learn about if on your own, like nobody was watching, you just go for it. Start there. Okay, now let's say in Minecraft or whatever you choose, and you're going to build out something that relates to your passion or your interest. So I think the passion project, and I didn't invent that either, but I think that to answer your question, then it's relevant to them. They care because, if they're into whatever it is, they care about, I don't know, animal safety, or they care about soccer, or they care about whatever. That's really what they spend their time on. Then what they build is automatically engaging for them. And it's different for everybody. And that's fine too. Why wouldn't it be? Everybody's different.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. How did you kind of start to use this approach and like find out about this approach and start to implement it in your classroom? Because
Hmm.
I forgot how long you said you were teaching, but I'm not sure if you like came in on day one and like we're gonna do project based.
No, no, I did the same. Okay, so how long I've been teaching is a long time. And actually, I taught other courses before. I the first half of my career, I taught English and history. And then I went back to school to learn programming. And then after that, I flipped over to computer science. But even when I was doing English and history, I thought there's got to be a way so that it's not just me talking and them taking notes. And so I mean, a long time ago, I heard about project-based learning. And so I tried to institute it. And so, for instance, when I used to teach seventh grade social studies, and we had the Civil War unit, and which had traditionally been this whole, you memorize the battles and where they were and when and how many people, and all this, like, forget it. So I came up with this idea. I said, let's have a Civil War fair. And we're going to spend 3 weeks, and you can get in groups, and you're going to pick something having to do with the Civil War, and you can create whatever you want, that something that you're interested in. And at the end, we're going to have a fair, and you're going to present and we're going to invite in all the other teachers and students and everything to see your thing. Well, guess what? You think that was more engaging than memorizing the battles? Of course it was. So, we had kids do, raps about Robert E. Lee. I had one group they were really into, what's it called? Oh my, it's these kind of using flags as communication devices. I can't remember what starts with a S, but I can't remember what it's called. And so they did this whole flag display because that was how they communicated on the battlefield. They had to know all this. And so they did a thing with that. And that was just so interesting. And the kids were into it. And everybody that came to the Civil War fair learned a lot about the Civil War. Now, there are other ways to do it. So I guess I suppose I've always been a little bit kind of off the map in terms of my own learning. I mean, I know that the things that I remember from back when dinosaurs roamed the earth when I was in school were the things that I did, not the things that I heard. So I remember particular projects that I did even back then. Teacher said, well, you can do X, to demonstrate your learning. So we were studying, I can't remember what it was, a poetry unit. And I did a multimedia presentation. I read William Blake poetry with sound and a light show. Well, I'll never forget that because I chose all those pieces back when I was in high school. So I guess I took that with me. And then when I went back to school to learn programming, our program, which was amazing, was all project based. Not all, but like 75% project based. They put you in a group and a team for a couple of months, and you had to build a working something, and you had to work with people, and you had to figure it out, and get help and figure out where you're going to get help and all that kind of stuff. So I guess I'm just kind of, I don't know if maybe I'm one of those lifelong learners that every school says they're trying to create, but I've discovered that there aren't that many of us out there, especially, I hate to say it, a lot of teachers aren't lifelong learners. They really aren't, but I am. And so I'm always interested in what is the aha moment? Like, what makes the light bulb go on? And kids say, yeah, that's it. And so I've always tried to make my classes have as many of those aha moments as possible. That's what I do.
That's so awesome. I mean, I think I just see like a lot of the philosophy and the approach that we've been trying to put into everything we do, that we've been iterating on pretty much since the pandemic started. It's just like finding out what gets kids excited,
Mm-hmm.
because once they're excited, they're just going to learn so fast. So I'm just I'm very like, yeah, this is just awesome. So
Well, what can I say? But buy the book. No, I'm just, I mean, if you want to, if you want to see kind of what goes in, in the background of what my
Yeah.
thinking is, that you might enjoy the book. But I mean,
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
that's what I do every day. And I tell people, somebody asked, was it hard to write the book? And I said, no, the book wrote itself, because all I did was talk about what I do every day in class. I don't have to research anything. I know what I do. It just, I just do it. I mean, it takes time to edit it and get it to publication and all of that. But in terms of talking about what I do, it's just like me talking to you now. I don't have to research anything. This is what I do. And, when you say, whatever you say, whatever you're hearing, this is me. This is the real me. And this is what I do in my classes. And so, like it or not, if you're in my class, this is what you're going to get.
I have a question.
Yes, Isla.
Do you charge for your book?
I do. Yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't put it out for free. Now you can, if you have a Kindle library, a Kindle Unlimited, you can read it for free. It's about, now I'm really going to get in trouble because I'm going to say what I don't know, but I think it's about the print version is about $9 and the ebook is about $6. So
Okay, so we have Kindle, so I don't need to ask for a discount.
if you have Kindle, you can look it up and you can just read it right there. But wouldn't you really rather have your own personal copy right in your? I'm just, I'm I'm just selling it. You have to. I mean, and teachers are not the kind of people like I'm actually, believe it or not, a little uncomfortable trying to sell something, because teachers usually do stuff, we don't get paid, like we're not becoming millionaires, and we do it because we love it. So we're all a little uncomfortable with saying, but I think there's a lot of value in it. And I do think that if somebody's kind of new to the field of computer science or thinking about maybe there's a different, cooler, creative way to do it, there's value in it for sure. I mean, it's not a big book. It's a short read, but I know there's stuff in there that anybody could get and they could use it tomorrow in their class.
Yeah, well, I think that, just this learning process, it just gets people really excited and learning faster, so it can really apply anywhere whenever you're learning. But I think that the main challenge is that you see how this is just going to get kids and adults learning so much faster because they're engaged and excited and it's their thing. But the main challenge is just how we are able to like apply it in all these different areas where it's like you're teaching math or you're teaching writing, and trying to apply it in a way that's really leveraging how humans learn best, right? So what do you see as the main challenges in trying to apply this in just everyday classrooms or online courses, and things like
Hmm.
that?
Well, I would say it's really funny because I've had other teachers say to me, "Well, that's easy for you to do because you teach computers and kids love computers, and so it is going to be naturally you can do fun stuff." But I teach, fill in the blank, history, math, whatever, and it is by its very nature not fun, and so it's just not going to be fun. So they think I have some sort of built-in advantage. And then when I tell them, oh, yes, but I used to teach English and history, and I know that you can do this way. That's usually the end of the conversation, by the way. And but but I know that it can work. I know that it can. Everybody, it's every discipline is different. Every teacher's different. No two people are the same, and that's fine. That's as it should be. But I think the biggest challenge, I would say, is getting teachers to actually do learning like this, because most teachers teach the way they were taught, right? Most of us do. So if we had somebody putting stuff up on the board and us writing it down and regurgitating word for word, and that's how we learned, then that's usually how we teach. So what I would love to see is have some sort of workshop where adult teachers get together and build stuff that they choose, and they'll see the magic then, and then they'll say, oh, how can I do this in my classes?
I have a question that's very related. So, if you could change like one thing about education today, like you could just change it all around the world, one thing, what would it be?
Wow, that's a toughie. Well, honestly, and I'm not saying anything really radical here, but I would do anything to eliminate high stakes testing, at the end of the year. Now, y'all are in homeschool, so you're not subject to this, but every kid in America has to do all these tests at the end of the year to assess their learning. And I think if we could do away with that, I don't really think that really accurately assesses what they've learned. And I think it takes the joy out of learning. And I think learning should be fun, hard fun, but that destroys it all. And I guess if I could wave my magic wand and say I would get rid of high stakes testing and make as much learning as possible, incorporate an approach like this, where kids have voice and they have choice and they pursue their own interests, but not, still there has to be, the thing that teachers know, all good teachers know, is like, they'll know, well, we're starting here and we want to go there. I don't know if this is backwards on camera, but anyway, we want to start at point A, we want to get to point B. And how do we get there? And how do we know that we've gotten there? So teachers know how to kind of structure stuff like that. So, but if they also could incorporate this piece about getting, project-based hands-on learning with voice, student voice and choice, man, kids would not dread school, I don't think. And I think a lot of kids around the world dread school. It's something they endure. And that just saddens me because I think it could be so much more.
Yeah, I do think for Isla and I, when we were in public school, because we just started during the pandemic, it was like our parents always kind of they were like, okay, I don't really think that the grades really reflect like super accurately how much you know about something. It was really funny. I think in fifth grade or something. Um, I got a like the equivalent of a B in economics, which in both my parents are economics, and they've been talking to me about it since I could understand English. And so it was, and then my dad just like was just hysterical. He was like, "This is just hilarious." And so, and I just, for me, I think a lot of it was kind of just thinking about like, I'm going to learn what I can, but I'm not going to stress out about these tests. But there were a lot of kids that were super stressed, and their parents were like, "You've got to get the best grades." And and they would be really upset when they got something that it might have been completely, just like with not a reflection of what they actually knew or how much effort they put in. So, yeah, I
Yeah,
definitely
that saddens me. I mean, I teach in an independent school, and there's a lot of grade pressure. I see it in middle school. A lot of it the kids put on themselves. A lot of it is from other places. And I mean, the whole system is kind of that way. You have to get X grades to get this, to get into that school, to get, and we can't really change that. But I mean, I hear students say, "Oh, I bombed that math test." And I asked them, in your definition, bombing means below what? And they'll say, well, like below a 95. And I'm like, that's bombing. I mean, you got an A, but you bombed the test, and it's just kind of sad to me that, even in, let's say, sixth or seventh grade, that's they've internalized how, measuring their learning that way. And after a while, they know how to game the system. It's all a matter of, how do you get the grade, and then it's all about, getting the grade. It's nothing about learning, really.
I have a question.
Hmm.
Um, so without that system, what would you put in its place so that people are able to transfer to the next school, and be able to live life?
I wish I had the answer to that, Isla, and I really don't. I mean, I guess there are people that are paid money to come up with those kinds of things, and I'm just not really sure. But it seems to me, I know that there are schools. I would look at a country like Finland, um, which seems to always be at the top of these standardized test scores in the world, and they have like no homework, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Things that make you go, really? No homework? And they're achieving and they do a lot of project-based stuff.
Uh-huh. Their classes are also shorter.
Their classes are short.
Hours are shorter.
I didn't know that either. So, I mean, I know that there have been and are schools in countries around the world that do things differently that we can learn from. I'm not really, I'm just really narrowly focused on what I do in my classroom and trying to kind of push it out a little bit. I couldn't tell you how to change everything, but sounds like y'all already know about Finland, which is really cool. So, I mean, that's everything that I've read. That's the thing that resonates the most with me. I think that those people are really onto something great.
Yeah, I want to get your thoughts on this because we were kind of thinking about like if you were to take away grades as like a measure of demonstrating what you know, because that's really kind of the thing is that it's not necessarily to like tell you what you know so much as like show colleges that what you know and show jobs and stuff like that. So then the thing that we kind of came to is that when you're doing project-based learning, you have your project as the demonstration for what you're doing. You don't need someone to tell you that you know how to make a game in Minecraft if you made a game in Minecraft and it's awesome, right? And so, kind of the conclusion we came to was that the projects speak for themselves. You're proving that you know something by demonstrating it through your work.
I completely agree. And I have heard people talk, it's what they call a portfolio based system. And I'll tell you, like in my world, in computer science, like you could do great at AP computer science, which my school, by the way, does not offer, because we think we have something that's actually better. We have a whole project-based thing all the way up through 12th grade, where kids are doing VR coding and everything, based on their passions and their choices. But anyway, you can get into a good computer science program at a good university that teaches that really well, and you could get out with really good grades. But I know if you apply for a job, what they want to know is, what have you done? Show me what you have built. That's how you're going to demonstrate what you know, right? They don't really care. I mean, and so I mean, I might get in trouble for saying this, but there's lots of people in the computer science field, the development field, who haven't gone to college. There's one guy, what's his name? Bill Gates, who did one semester or something at Harvard, or whatever. I mean, it's what you can do. That's what they care about. And
we see that even in like we've been hiring developers to work on our app, which is basically trying to like scale this whole learning approach where and we've hired people who they haven't gotten a college degree or they're still in college, and they come in and we just say like, what have you built? Show us.
yep,
Want to see
yep.
it. We want to see it. If it's good, then we'll consider you. But I mean, the degree, I think, is saying less and less about what you really know, because even if you are let's say you get like an A in math, you get all the answers correct. When it comes to these sort of things, it's about whether or not you can solve the problem and whether or not you can solve it the most efficiently. You know, you can get the answer correct, but is your code or is your algorithm going to run faster than this guy's? And a lot of that is problem solving and actually learning about how you can not just take the question out of context, but think about what you're actually trying to solve, what the solution is that you're trying to build. But I think
Yep.
the last question before we wrap this up
I
can
also have one question.
okay, you could also ask that question. But how can people get a hold of you if they're interested in what you do?
Okay. Well, okay. Maybe the best place would be on my YouTube channel, which is going to be linked in the description below. I'm Crouching Python. It might be the best way. Just trying to think. I think that might be the best way to do it, I think. Because then you can kind of, like we're talking about, you can see what I've done and you can see what I do. And if that's something you like, hit me up in the comments or something like that and let me know. I would say that's probably the best way. And Isla has one more question. I know that.
So I was wondering, like, in your classroom, are people like, are people are people sure that they know and that they know what they know and they're able to get through life? Because I think with the grading system, people get that satisfaction. Okay, I've got this out of the way. But how do you get that when you're in that classroom doing project based learning?
Okay, so that's a really good question, Isla. Really good question. Well, I do have to enter grades. I'm in a school where they have to enter numerical grades at the end of the quarter, and I grade the projects. So we have that piece. So for instance, I give them, if they're making a game in Scratch, I say, here's the Scratch rubric, 10 points for this, 10 for this, 10 for this, 20 for that, 10 for this, 10 for this, 10 for this. Or you're doing my command block game, here's how you get the points. And so the other thing I say is then you'll know what your grade is. You won't have to wait for me, to grade it and get it back to you. You'll know as you're going along exactly what your grade is, because they do care about that. So that's, I don't think project-based learning means no grades. It could mean that. I mean, you could self-assess, and sometimes I do that, but I also have, my rubric is tied to the grading scale, so you know what you have. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
And then the other thing, though, I say is, if somebody has a question, somebody says, I don't know how to move my character in Scratch, and I just saw somebody else in the classroom do it. I say, ask Matilda. She's the expert. Just get out of your seat and go ask her. She just did it. And then Matilda is demonstrating her knowledge. And maybe Matilda came in feeling like, I'm not very good at coding. I don't like that. I'm not good at it. But all of a sudden, she's the expert on that. And then she demonstrates, yeah, here's how you do it. You just do this and this, and you move this and you drag this thing over there. And then you use the arrow keys and all. And so now she doesn't feel like, she doesn't feel as much anymore like she doesn't really know how to code, So no, she didn't get a grade for that, right? But she demonstrated to somebody else. She became the expert. And I do a lot of that at my class. If somebody's learned something, I make them the expert.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. And your book and your YouTube channel in the description. Yeah. And I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. You guys are delightful and ask really great questions, and just excited to see what you're going to create. And as I say,
Link in the description. Yeah.
Thanks again for having me. I appreciate it.
Have a great day.
Bye. You too. Bye bye.
Bye.